just gonna die in the end. Okay, guys, I just wanted to make a quick video today discussing this whole SARGON of AKKAD and Patreon thing. For those of you who don't know, just really to give you the briefest of background, Patreon recently removed Sargon from their platform for some things he had said in a video some time ago, but the video is still available on YouTube. It was during a live stream, I believe, and he used some rather inflammatory language, and so they removed him from the platform. A lot of people are very upset that he was removed from the platform. One of the reasons I'm making this video is two people here in our community, both of whom I respect and admire a great deal, have been with us for a long time. I've had numerous conversations with. I have a lot of respect for their opinions and their thoughts, and they both have contacted me saying, you know what, I'm considering, I just wanted you to understand, I'm considering dropping Patreon. It has nothing to do with me, but they were considering it just because they don't want to support Patreon anymore, which I completely understand. But when people, again, have a place in my life where I really respect what they have to say, it captures my attention. And I thought, well, maybe I'll make a video explaining why I haven't gotten to that point yet with Patreon. And I know the easy thing to say is, well, yeah, because you make money over at Patreon. Yes, I do. There are other ways I could go about doing that, and I'll touch on that later. But that's not the core of the issue, and I'm going to explain it all to you. Now, when I do this, when I make this video, I know there will be people with differing opinions, and I like to hear from them in the comment section of the video. All I ask is, again, it's something that shouldn't have to be pointed out. If you have a differing opinion, and it's very possible that maybe I don't have all the facts, I missed a fact or missed some information, let me know. Who knows? Maybe you have stuff that'll change my opinion altogether. I'm always interested in hearing new things. All I ask is present it like a normal human being. That I know people get upset when I lash back at people, but when people present something in a vile, vitriolic way, that's how I respond. So don't be shy about letting me know if I've missed something or just why you disagree with me. All I ask is we do it in a relatively civil tone if everybody wants to keep everything in a civil tone, because I'm the type that I fire back rather harshly. All right, all that said, now I should point out that this whole, I've made you'll see me glancing now, I've made some notes because I don't want to miss anything I wanted to cover here. This idea of being removed from a situation because of things you said is nothing new to me. I have experience with that way before the days of the internet, because many of you know I did stand-up comedy for a living in the late 80s and early 90s, and at least 3 different clubs I was kicked out of. I think there were more, but there are 3 that I remember specifically, and I was kicked out of them because my sense of humor is the same as you guys see it now. It's always been very over the top. I find humor in a lot of things that some people say their humor should not be found in. I think stereotypes are hilarious and make fun of them regularly. So that leaves you in a world where a lot of people, because we had social justice warriors back then as well, we just didn't have specific titling for them. And that leaves you in a situation where, yeah, they don't want to play you playing in their sandbox. And the funny thing was, 2 of those 3 places that I got kicked out of, I killed on the night I got kicked out. But again, we just had people that were of a certain belief structure, and they didn't want me tainting their club anymore. So it happens. It's like, okay, it sucks, one less place I can go make some money from, but it happens. All I'm saying is I have experience with it. Now, as far as my stance on should people be removed from platforms, no, I'm not for that. I have always been of the belief you should not be removed from a platform. You should not be squelched in any way unless you call directly for violence on others or call for a situation to have someone result in a violence. For instance, you don't scream fire in a crowded movie theater if there is none, that type of thing. Outside of that, no. And I don't care what your political leanings are. You could be the most shrill, shrieking, obnoxious SJW in the world, which you guys all know how I feel about that, and I still don't think you should be silenced. I think everybody should be allowed to say what they want to say, and then we can say whatever we want to say in response to it, and have discourse, have argument, have whatever it may be. As long as nobody is physically hurt, I think I'm not for ever taking someone's platform away. Now, I should also mention too, I want to give this as background. I saw something, I wish I had bookmarked it. Sargon said himself on a video, I believe it was on YouTube, but he has said that he likes using terminology that is inflammatory. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but that's basically what he was saying. He likes using terms like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not particularly my way. When I say I got kicked out of places, it's because I think things are funny that others don't. And apparently a lot of the things I think are funny are very offensive to others. I've never in my life said anything trying to be offensive or trying to get a negative reaction. It just happens, and I don't care when it does. So we differ a little bit there. But I think it's very important. Let me give you the quote from Sargon that Patreon discovered and was the reason that he was removed, because I think for context is very important. And this is the quote: "I just can't be bothered with people who chose to treat me like this. It's really annoying. You're acting like a bunch of N-words. Just so you know, you act like a white N-word. Look, you carry on, but don't expect me to then have a debate with one of your," I think they've got one of your fuckers, I think. Like, why would I bother? It's F-word, so I'm assuming. Maybe you're just acting like an N-word, mate. Have you considered that? Do you think white people act like this? White people are meant to be polite and respectful to one another, and you guys can't even act like white people. It's really amazing to me." Now, very important, he directed that at the alt-right. Okay? He was and I assume, and it seems obvious, what he was trying to do is hit them with a word that he thought would be the most damaging to them, would infuriate them the most, the alt-right, which is throwing that N-word in there. Would I do it? No. You guys know that. I just don't like the N-word. I don't like using it simply because, and I don't even believe in the idea of curse words. I've told you guys over and over, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we as a society think a word like fuck is dirty and nasty, but intercourse or banging is fine. It's just stupid. It's all semantics, and we get too carried away over semantics. However, in the case of the N-word, there is no other meaning for it other than to demean someone. It's only been used in the past to demean an entire race of people. I mean, that's what, to try and just almost dehumanize them. So I don't care for the word. That's why I don't use it. Sargon, is what he said there over the top? Yeah. But by his own admission, he likes to use terminology that inflames. And he did. I will say this: I can't believe that you say things like that in a public forum and don't expect that at some point you might seek some sort of backlash. So I'm not saying that I agree with him being deplatformed. I'm just saying you have to know that if you're going to say things like this, you're going to hear about it eventually. But that's the quote. So now Patreon removed him from their platform. He can no longer use Patreon. A lot of people are all upset because they're saying Patreon is a bunch of SJWs, oversensitive. They got rid of a guy just because and he wasn't even saying it in a mean, nasty way. He was throwing it at the alt-right. He wasn't throwing it at black people, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure that. The way I'm seeing this, I don't see Patreon maybe run by SJWs. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But even if they are, I don't think this was a case of them acting on their social justice warrior instincts. I think that was them acting on other people's social justice warrior instincts. So if Patreon is SJW, I think they got cannibalized by some of their own, because what I think happened and I have more evidence coming up here to back this up, I think other SJWs found that clip of Sargon. They matched it up to Patreon's terms of service, which I should have had handy here, which would have made sense. I apologize for that. You can look them up easily enough. I've read them to know that, yeah, it probably was outside of their terms of service. Again, I apologize for not having them handy. If you guys want to read Patreon's terms of service, see what you think. See if they're, if that did run afoul of them. So what I believe happened was an SJW group or individual, I'd say a group of individuals, came to Patreon complaining and threatening, as SJWs always do, saying, okay, this is what this guy said, here's your terms of service, are you going to let this fly? Now Patreon deplatformed them. So I'm not making excuses for Patreon, I'm telling you what I think happened. So what we have to, and first, before we go into exactly what Patreon's limited options were, there's another service called Subscribestar. Now, this is why I'm sure of what happened to Patreon. When Sargon could no longer use Patreon. He went to Subscribestar. Subscribestar is the same thing as Patreon. It's a fan funding site. Another man, Tim Pool. Tim Pool is a YouTuber. He's made some great videos about this whole thing too, by the way, if you want to look him up. Good, excellent guy for giving a perspective on anything. I really like him. And he doesn't even necessarily agree with me on this down the line, but I like him. I think he's worth watching. Tim Pool did the same thing. He also opened up a Subscribestar. Within 3 days of Sargon opening a Subscribestar account, PayPal has pulled their association with them. So what that means is if you are on Subscribestar, you can no longer get paid out through PayPal. Tim Pool has made a video saying, well, I don't even know how I go about getting paid. He's going to figure it out, of course, but the bank accounts don't work well for him to have it paid that way. PayPal was how he did it. Already, Subscribestar, let me tell you something. Having a payment processor like PayPal pull out of your company or pull a relationship away from your company is a death knell. You're not going to be able to attract content creators to your service if PayPal is not involved. Took 3 days. You don't think that those same SJWs are the ones who got to Patreon? Even the SJWs generally don't mobilize that quickly. They've been watching this whole thing. I think it was the outside SJWs came to Patreon and said, you better get rid of this guy. Patreon said, holy crap, what he did do is against our terms of service. We've got no choice because these SJWs will do exactly what they did to Subscribestar. They will go after the payment processors that we work with. So now Patreon has this choice. They can deplatform Sargon, which they know, they're not stupid. They know it's going to result in a lot of backlash, and hope that they can survive that backlash, or they cannot give in to the SJWs who may have a point about it violating Patreon's terms of service, knowing the SJWs will be relentless and get companies like PayPal and the banks not to do business with them anymore and sink Patreon. Patreon would be done. So on one hand, they could deplatform Sargon and have to deal with that fallout and hope they survive, or they could not deplatform them and be eliminated. They would be done. That's where I think Patreon ended up. That's why I'm not as willing to jump on top of Patreon yet, because this is how I feel it happened. Again, if you guys have evidence to the contrary of anything I'm saying, please let me know. I also don't believe there's any way that Patreon themselves just went after Sargon. You don't have to be a genius to figure out that this was going to happen, that you're going to get this kind of clapback. They had to have been approached by somebody. Again, it wouldn't make any sense. Even if they are social justice warriors, if you're that much of a social justice warrior, and especially somebody like Patreon, they're not the level of Google or someone else that can afford to take hits on viewership, or you couldn't, come on, let's face it, you can't organize a boycott of Google that's really going to hurt their bottom line. They're too big. It's not the case with Patreon. I can't see them going out of their way looking for a fight that could decimate their business. Somebody brought their attention to it. Now, also, everybody has said, well, why are there others still on the platform, on Patreon, that say outlandish things, that have, these out of the realm of the norm extremist views? They're still there and Sargon isn't. Well, let me ask you this. You guys are all members of this community. Why do I get strikes on videos that are the exact same content that others post and go merrily about their way? Because I got into the crosshairs of those Japanese production companies. I mean, what I'm doing is in the clear because I get the strikes overturned, but it's still, I'm in their crosshairs. Sargon got put in the crosshairs of the SJWs. That's exactly why. That's not to say those other people on Patreon aren't going to at some point get deplatformed. They just haven't been put in the crosshairs yet. It's as simple as that. That's why. It's the same thing as saying, well, if you're going down the highway, speed limit 65, you're on the outside lane, everybody's doing 80, but you get plucked out and get a ticket. Why you? Well, you got put in the crosshairs. It wasn't fair, but they still got you because you were exceeding the speed limit. That's the best explanation I can give. Now, I think it was two broadcasters on the right side, I think, and I hope I'm right here, I think it was Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin, were talking about building their own fan funding program, their own site. I wish them the best. I genuinely wish them the best. I hope they can do it. But you have to understand, and I don't think this has really been addressed a lot, setting that up would be a big task, but not that Herculean. They're going to have to set up a fan funding site and also set up a payment processor, because guaranteed, as soon as you start bringing Sargon and Tim Pool and whoever else from the right, or whoever else SJWs target as extreme right, as soon as you start bringing them aboard, they're going to do the same thing to you they did to Subscribestar. PayPal's going to pull out. They'll get banks to pull out their association. So to me, for anybody to set up a competitive situation that Peterson and Rubin are talking about, you not only have to create the site, you got to create your own payment processor. Now you're talking millions and millions of dollars in investment. If they can do it, great. I'll be happy to check them out 100%. Do I think they can do it? Probably not. Now, that is why I don't have an issue at this point with what I know with Patreon. I think they were honestly 100% put in a position of, if we don't take action against this guy, who some people have made the case that he clearly violated our terms of service, then we're out of business, because they'll go after our payment processors. I think they did what they had to do to keep eating. That's what I believe. Now, could I continue on without Patreon doing things the way they do, where we have, a site set up where you guys can pay your $5 a month and watch everything we make? And because let's face it, I mean, YouTube is a done deal. The similar thing happened to YouTube when you think about it. It was one SJW working at the Wall Street Journal who kept clicking on a video over and over till he got an offensive ad so he could write an article about it, and it completely changed the entire landscape of YouTube forever with the adpocalypse. It was the exact same thing that happened there. And the thing is, Google/YouTube are the height of political correctness and social justice warriors. So of course they went way too far over the top. Instead of just telling people, yeah, it happens on 0.001% of the time you might get an ad in there. With the cheap ad rates you're paying, deal with it. No, they wouldn't do that. Of course, they had to make huge sweeping changes to make sure that nobody was ever subjected to such a thing again. It happens all the time. So could I do it on my own without Patreon involved and stuff? Yes. What I could do, I already own web space. I use GoDaddy. I have web space there. I could build a website, and I could post videos there, link them through Vimeo, the account I use to upload the videos, and have a membership site. The problem is, I put in, just doing stuff for the channel and the goosh, I put in 12 to 13 hours a day now, which is why I have to put eye drops in my eyes every time before I record, because I spend so much time in front of the computer. They're always red. They're always bloodshot. It would take up so much time. I don't know that I could keep creating the content. There's a lot to be done with maintaining a website, and certainly with the initial build of a website, importing all the videos that we've made at Patreon over there. In short, Patreon, even though they take a percentage, you can say, well, if you make your own website, well, you keep more of the money that's donated. Absolutely you do. You're right. You pay whatever little percentage that PayPal gets for accepting it on your behalf, and I would make more. However, what Patreon does for me in accepting that is worth it to me. I don't mind them taking their cut. Because as far as a cost value thing, they're fine with me. It's what they charge me, what percentage they take for the services they offer, I think is well worth it. If I come to the conclusion at some point that I think they're being unfair to people and deplatforming them, would I jump away from Patreon? I don't know. I might. I think I would at least take the time, invest the time in building that own website so people had another option. As it stands right now, I understand what Patreon had to do. Again, are they a SJW organization? I do not know. I don't know who's at the top of Patreon. Maybe some of you guys do. But even if they are, I still think it was SJWs cannibalizing SJWs. Because if any of you think that they care about that, I mean, when they've got somebody in their sites, they don't care what the collateral damage is. They're going to go get them, and that's what they've done to Sargon. They went to get him. Is Sargon my particular brand of entertainment? No, he's an all right guy. I've seen some of his videos prior to this. He's okay. Do I think people should be deplatformed at all? No. Again, outside of calling for violence against others, absolutely not. Do I think he should have been deplatformed for what he said in that video? No, absolutely not. That's my personal take. If I had those terms of service in place that Patreon does, and somebody called my attention to it and said, listen, if you don't take action against him, he clearly violated your terms of service, we're coming after you, would I have done the same thing to salvage my business? Yeah, probably. I mean, now maybe there's a lot of you out there that believe that Patreon should put principle above money, and they should have just left him there and said, do what you got to do. In a perfect world, sure, maybe that would have happened. I don't think when push came to shove, if you're honest with yourself and you have a business that's doing well and making money, that you would do that as well, and potentially, very potentially, put yourself completely out of business. No, I don't think you would. So at this point, I don't have an issue with how Patreon handled this. Now, some of you do. I completely understand that. Don't get me wrong. Again, I said at the top here, two people who I have the greatest amount of admiration and respect for have an issue with how Patreon did it. I completely understand that. Completely understand. If they decide to move away from Patreon, that the only reason I feel bad about that is I don't have another way to get the videos that I post on Patreon to them, because I'd like to be able to do that. And again, the only way I know of doing that would be to start my own site. And again, and I know what people are going to say too, well, have somebody do your website for you. No, I don't. Everything that comes out of the Goosh or our YouTube channel, because of that community element, because of how I feel about it, comes from me. All the editing comes from me. Everything comes from me or Spaz Kid. Spaz Kid will be back in college in a month. I'm not going to have him spending time working on a website when he needs to be doing schoolwork. So there is no other option. I handle everything for the Goosh and for the YouTube channel on my own. That's how I like it. Even if it does mean 12, 13-hour days, I don't care. Because to be perfectly honest, I enjoy what I do. Building a website, not as enjoyable. But as far as the entertainment portion, even the editing for the most part doesn't bother me that much. Once in a while it gets to be drudgery, but watching videos and then enjoying that journey with you guys by going into the comments section and goofing around and all the goofy crap we do, especially over at the Goosh with the great community we have there. I enjoy all of that. 12, 13-hour days, I'm okay with that. So that's where I stand on it. And basically where it stands right now, I understand that a lot of people want to leave Patreon. Again, I harbor no ill will towards anybody that wants to do that. You gotta do what every individual thinks is right. But the unfortunate thing is, and not even so much for me because I do have other means of income, but for some people that rely on that Patreon income, it's unfortunate because I understand people are moving away from Patreon because they think Patreon did something that goes against what they believe is right. But the people being punished are those creators far more than Patreon. Because no matter how many ways you slice it, at least Patreon's still in business. If they hadn't made this move to remove Sargon, they probably would be on their way out. You can't really hurt them any worse than they would have been hurt by not doing it. Who can be hurt are the innocent creators who make content at Patreon and are caught up in the crossfire. That's where I stand. Let me know what you guys think. Sorry about that being so long, but I wanted to get to all the points of it. And again, tell me what you guys think. Talk to you later.